My wife cheated with our divorce lawyer, then suddenly claimed I agreed to give her half of our $300, $0 inheritance and our $500, $0 house. Now she's suing me for millions and I think she's hiding the truth about where the money really went. I never thought I'd be the guy to get like this. One day, everything seemed fine, normal life, a marriage that looked stable on the surface. My wife Lisa was the kind of woman everyone admired, beautiful, confident, outspoken. We'd been together for over 10 years and honestly I thought I knew her inside out. But then out of nowhere I started noticing little things that didn't add up. She was more secretive than usual, hiding her phone more often, deleting texts, acting tense whenever I got close. Small signs, I told myself. Just stress, maybe work. But deep down I felt a gnawing suspicion that something was wrong. It all hit me one evening when I came home early from work. I usually work late on Thursdays, but that day I decided to surprise Lisa. I had no idea that surprise would be the moment I'd find her in bed with the damn divorce lawyer we'd hired just a few months earlier. His name was Mark, a slick guy with a smirk that made my skin crawl. I had no reason to suspect anything at first, until I saw them through the window, tangled together, clothes half off, breathless. My stomach dropped and for a second I couldn't breathe. I wasn't prepared for that kind of betrayal, especially not from her. The worst part, I had no idea she'd been cheating on me with Mark all this time. We'd gone through a messy divorce process, and I thought we were just arguing over money. Turns out she'd been seeing him behind my back, probably during our meetings. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I wanted to run, scream, punch something, but I just stood there, frozen, watching her kiss him like he was the only thing that mattered. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. When she finally saw me, her face twisted into a cruel smile as if she'd been waiting for me to catch her. She called out, "Oh, you're home early. Funny, I didn't hear you come in," with that bitchy tone she always used when she thought she was in control. I didn't say a word at first. I just stared, trying to process what I'd just seen. My mind raced back through every argument, every late night, every secret she'd kept. It was like a switch flipped inside me and suddenly I was furious. Not just angry, raging. How could she do this? How could she betray me after everything we'd been through? Our wedding vows, our life savings, the house, everything was supposed to be ours. And now I found out she'd been lying, cheating, sneaking around with a snake like Mark. I felt sick, betrayed, humiliated. I wanted to tear her apart, but somehow I kept my composure. I told her to get out of the house and she just smirked as if she was the one in control still. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything, the way she looked at him, the sneer on her face when she saw me, like I was the fool. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how she could be so cold, so calculating. I thought we had a good life, or at least I did. Turns out I was just blind. And what made it worse was the way she started spinning her stories, lying, twisting the truth. She claimed I was always too busy, that I didn't pay enough attention to her, that she was just lonely. She said she needed excitement, that Mark was just a fling, not a big deal, but I knew better. I saw the way she looked at him, the way she touched him. That wasn't some innocent affair, it was real and it was ongoing. I was drowning in a mix of emotions, anger, heartbreak, confusion. I trusted her, loved her, built a life with her. And now I felt like I didn't even know who she was. I started digging into her phone, her emails, anything I could find. That's when I uncovered things I wish I hadn't seen. She'd been talking about money, how she planned to use our inheritance, how she wanted half of everything. She claimed I'd agreed to give her half of our $300, $0 inheritance and the house, which was worth around $500, $0. I never signed anything like that, but she was ruthless, lying, manipulating, trying to turn the tables on me. She even threatened to sue me for millions, saying I was hiding money, that I'd somehow taken it all. I couldn't believe the audacity. I started to realize that this wasn't just a simple affair. It was part of a bigger game, a plan to take everything I had. She'd been playing me from the start. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. All I knew was that I was done being the fool. I needed to find out the truth about where the money really went, because I had a sinking feeling she was hiding something much darker behind her lies. The betrayal cut deep, and I didn't know how to process it all. I was just trying to breathe, trying to figure out my next move, while she kept spinning her web of lies, convinced she could get away with it all. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her and Mark in that bed, their faces twisted with satisfaction. I knew I had to get to the bottom of this, who she really was, what she was hiding, and most importantly, where the money had gone. I started digging through our joint files, bank statements, anything I could find. It was like peeling back layers of a lie she'd carefully built around herself. The first shock came when I discovered her claiming I'd agreed to give her half of our inheritance and the house. That wasn't true. We had a prenup, and I never signed anything that said I was giving her my half. She was trying to manipulate the situation, probably to get her hands on my money without me realizing. But I also noticed something else: strange transactions in our bank account. Large sums going out, but no clear record of where they ended up. I called the bank, asked for detailed statements, and what I saw made my blood run cold. She'd been funneling money into accounts I didn't recognize. Some of it went to offshore accounts, others to shady companies she'd set up in her name. I had no idea she was capable of this level of deception. Meanwhile, she was out there claiming I was the one hiding money, trying to take everything from her. That was rich, coming from someone who'd been secretly siphoning off cash for months. I realized she'd been planning her escape for a long time, probably even before we separated. She was orchestrating this entire charade, her affair, her lies, her legal threats, all to cover her tracks. I needed proof, something concrete. So I hired a private investigator. I didn't want to believe she'd actually be stupid enough to leave evidence behind, but I was wrong. The PI uncovered recordings of her meeting with Mark, discussing their plans. She was talking about how she wanted to settle everything so she could start fresh, maybe with Mark, maybe with more money. I also found out she'd been talking about how she'd take everything from me: our house, the inheritance, even the small life insurance policy I had. She'd been telling her friends she was done with the fake marriage and that she was going to get what she deserved. That bitch wasn't just cheating, she was planning her escape, her new life, at my expense. I was furious. I felt betrayed on every level. How could she pretend to be the caring wife all these years, then turn around and screw me over like this? The worst part was knowing she'd been lying so blatantly, so convincingly. She'd spun stories about how I was neglectful, how I didn't care enough, all to justify her affair. But the truth was, she'd been planning this entire betrayal for months, maybe longer. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I'd given her everything: my love, my trust, my hard-earned money, and she'd been using me as a stepping stone to her new life. The more I uncovered, the more I realized she'd been lying about the money from the start. When I confronted her with the evidence, her reaction was pure defiance. She said I was crazy, that I was paranoid, and that I was making things up. She everything, but I could see the cracks in her. She was panicked, but also angry that I was catching on. She accused me of trying to control her, of not trusting her, while she was out there secretly planning her escape. It was a classic manipulation, gaslighting me into thinking I was the problem when she was the one with her hand in the cookie jar. That confrontation was a turning point. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I also knew I had to protect what was mine. I started gathering more evidence, consulting lawyers, and preparing for what was coming next. I wasn't going to let her walk away with half my inheritance, my house, or anything else she claimed was hers. She'd lied so much. I didn't know what to believe anymore, but I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. The betrayal was deep, and the emotional toll was enormous, but I refused to let her manipulate me into losing everything I'd worked for. Honestly, I felt like I was in some twisted game. She had the charm, the lies, the legal firepower. She thought she could take everything and walk away. But I was done playing nice. I was going to expose her for who she really was, and I was going to get justice. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, dignity, and finally putting an end to her lies. I had no idea how far she was willing to go, but I knew one thing: she was not going to get away with this without a fight. Once I had enough evidence, I knew I had to act fast. My gut told me Lisa was planning something bigger, probably to cut me out entirely and claim she was entitled to everything. The more I dug, the clearer it became that her story about the inheritance and the house was just the tip of the iceberg. She kept pushing this narrative that I'd agreed to give her half of everything, but it was all a lie. I never signed anything, never agreed to any of it. She was trying to manipulate the legal system, and I couldn't let her get away with it. I consulted with a lawyer I found through a recommendation. Mark, ironically enough, the very same guy she'd been screwing around with. I wanted someone who knew the ins and outs of divorce law, especially when it came to hidden assets and fraud. The lawyer, a sharp guy named David, listened carefully, then laid out my options. I was going to file for a legal separation, contest her claims, and demand a full financial disclosure. I also told him I suspected she'd been laundering money and that I needed to initiate a forensic audit of our accounts. While all this was happening, Lisa's attitude shifted. She got more aggressive, more bitchy. She started throwing tantrums, claiming I was trying to ruin her reputation and that I was just jealous because she was moving on. She even accused me of trying to control her, which was laughable considering I just found out she'd been secretly planning her escape for months. She refused to cooperate with the lawyer, refused to release any financial info, and started threatening me with lawsuits. Her lawyer, a sleazy guy named Carl, kept pushing her to settle, but Lisa was hell-bent on fighting me tooth and nail. Meanwhile, I kept pushing forward. I had a feeling she was hiding something even bigger, something that explained where the money really went. I started subpoenaing her bank records, phone records, even her emails. What I uncovered was shocking. She'd been funneling money into a series of shell companies and then transferring it offshore. I found transactions that linked her to accounts in the islands, the Bahamas, places I'd only heard about on TV. It was clear she'd been laundering the inheritance, probably to fund her new life with Mark or whoever she planned to run off with. The thought made me sick. I'd been so stupid to trust her, to believe we had a normal life. One day, I received a call from my pi. He followed her to a luxury hotel downtown. She was meeting with Mark again. But this time I had proof, photos, recordings, everything. She was planning her escape, talking about how she was tired of pretending, tired of me. She said she'd had enough of the fake marriage, and that she was going to start fresh with her lawyer's help. That's when I realized she was not just cheating. She was actively planning to steal my money, leave me, and start over. That was the moment I knew I had to act decisively. I arranged a meeting with my lawyer to discuss my next move. We drafted a restraining order to prevent her from draining any more accounts, and I filed for full disclosure of her assets. I also started preparing for a court battle, one that I knew wouldn't be easy, especially with her lawyer pushing her to fight me on everything. But I was determined. I wasn't going to let her take what wasn't hers, and I wasn't going to be the fool who got played. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she betray everything we'd built? It was like she had no conscience, no remorse. She was just out for herself, willing to destroy us both if it meant getting what she wanted. That realization fueled my resolve. I was done being the victim. I was going to fight her in court, expose her lies, and reclaim what was mine. I knew she'd try to spin her stories, accuse me of abuse or mismanagement, but I had the evidence, and I was ready to show the world who she really was. The betrayal cut deep, but it also made me sharper, more determined. And I knew this wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. The court date was set, and I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. Lisa's lawyer, Carl, was relentless, trying to paint me as the dishonest one, claiming I'd been hiding assets and trying to cheat her out of her rightful share. But I had the evidence now: bank statements, offshore account details, recordings, even her own words caught on tape discussing her plans to run away with the money. I sat there in the courtroom, feeling a mix of anger and resolve. I knew I was fighting not just for my money but for my dignity. Lisa, of course, played the victim card from the start. She sat there with her bitchy smirk, trying to look innocent while her lawyer threw every possible accusation at me. She claimed I'd been abusive, controlling, that I'd refused to give her her fair share. But the truth was, she'd been the one secretly draining our accounts, laundering money, and planning her escape. When the judge asked her about the offshore accounts, she tried to deny everything, but I had the documentation to prove otherwise. I could see her starting to panic when the evidence was laid out in front of her. Meanwhile, I kept my composure. I explained how I'd always wanted to be fair, how I'd never signed any agreement giving her half of our assets, and how she'd been lying about her intentions the entire time. I told the court about her affair with Mark, the offshore transactions, and her plans to leave with our inheritance. I presented the recordings, the bank statements, and the forensic audit that proved she'd been lying and stealing from us for months. I could see her face turning red, her smirk fading. She was trying to spin her story, but the evidence was damning. After hours of testimony and argument, the judge finally made a ruling. She ordered Lisa to provide a full accounting of all assets, including offshore accounts, shell companies, and any other hidden funds. She also issued a temporary restraining order preventing Lisa from transferring or withdrawing any more money. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Finally, I had some control back. But I knew this was just the beginning. Lisa's lawyer promised to appeal, and I knew she'd fight dirty, but I was ready. The aftermath was chaos. Lisa's lawyer filed a countersuit claiming I'd been abusive and manipulative, trying to ruin her reputation. She started spreading stories to friends and family, painting herself as the victim of a controlling husband. But I didn't care about her lies anymore. I had the truth, and that's what mattered. I also began the process of reclaiming our house and the inheritance. I hired forensic accountants to trace every dollar, to show exactly where the money had gone, and to ensure Lisa didn't get a dime more than she was entitled to, which was nothing. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, angry. I'd loved her, trusted her, built a life with her, and she'd been planning her escape all along, secretly screwing around, stealing from us, and trying to take everything. It felt like I'd lost not just money but my sense of reality. Every day was one moment I was furious, the next I was just numb. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind. But deep down, I knew I had to keep fighting. I had to expose her for what she really was, greedy, manipulative, and utterly heartless. In the middle of all this, I realized something else. Betrayal isn't just about money or infidelity, it's about trust. And once that trust is broken, it's almost impossible to repair. I've learned to be more cautious, to pay attention to the small signs, and to never take someone's words at face value again. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight hard for what's right, even if it means dragging someone's lies into the light in front of a courtroom. I'm not exactly the same person I was before all this happened. I'm more guarded now, more aware of how quickly things can fall apart. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let her steal my life, my money, or my peace of mind without a fight. This whole ordeal has opened my eyes to the darkness that can hide behind a pretty face. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: trust is fragile. Be vigilant. Protect yourself. Because when someone's willing to lie, cheat, and steal from you, they're capable of much worse than you think. And sometimes the only way to win is to fight back with everything you've got. The legal battle dragged on for months. Every day felt like a new assault, more lies from her side, more evidence I had to counter. I kept pushing for full transparency, demanding the offshore accounts be frozen, the shell companies audited, and the true extent of her financial deception uncovered. The court battles were exhausting, emotionally draining, but I refused to give up. I knew she was capable of anything to keep her secrets hidden, and I had to stay one step ahead. One day, I finally got a breakthrough: the forensic accountants uncovered a massive transfer, almost $1 million, sent to an account in the Bahamas. It was money she'd stolen, money she'd planned to use to start over somewhere she thought I wouldn't find her. That was the moment I realized how deep her treachery went. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was trying to wipe us out financially. I couldn't believe I'd been married to someone so cold, so calculating. That discovery fueled my resolve even more. I knew I had to act fast before she disappeared completely. I arranged for a special hearing to freeze her assets and to get a court order for her to disclose all her financial dealings. When she showed up in court that day, her face was a mask of anger and desperation. She tried to spin her usual stories, claiming she was the victim, that I'd been abusive and controlling, that she deserved half because I'd failed her as a husband. But the judge wasn't buying it. When the forensic report was presented, revealing the offshore transfers and her secret accounts, her entire crumbled. She realized she didn't have the upper hand anymore. Meanwhile, I was also working on the legal side to get full custody of the house and the inheritance. I had to protect what was legally mine, especially considering her lies and her attempts to manipulate the system. The court granted me temporary sole possession of the house, pending a full hearing. I felt relief but also a deep sense of betrayal, knowing she'd been planning this all along, secretly siphoning money and lying to everyone, including her own lawyer. It was like finding out my entire marriage was a lie, built on deception from day one. Her lawyer, Carl, was furious. He tried to argue that Lisa was entitled to half of everything because of some vague agreement she claimed I'd signed. But I had the signed documents, proof I never agreed to any such thing. I also had her own words on tape, admitting she'd been planning to leave and take the money. The judge saw through her lies and I could tell she was losing control. Her face was flushed, her voice trembling when she tried to argue her case, but the evidence was too strong. I knew I'd won a crucial round, but I also knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. Behind the scenes, I was preparing for her next move. I knew she'd try to get around the court orders, hide more money, or even try to file false accusations against me. I hired a private investigator again, just to keep tabs on her movements. Sure enough, I caught her attempting to meet with a new lawyer, probably to strategize her next move. I also learned she'd been trying to contact some shady contacts, likely to get rid of more evidence or to find a way to bypass the court orders. That's when I realized this wasn't just a simple divorce, it was a full-blown war. In the end, I decided I had no choice but to go on the offensive. I filed for a permanent injunction against her, demanding she stay away from me and our assets. I also pressed charges for fraud, money laundering, and breach of fiduciary duty. I wanted her held accountable, not just for the money she'd stolen, but for the betrayal of everything we'd built. I knew it would hurt her. She'd never faced real consequences before. But I also knew I had to protect myself, my future, and whatever little dignity I had left. Looking back, I realize how much this has changed me. I used to think trust was the foundation of a marriage, but now I see it's something you have to earn every day. I learned that betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, even someone you love. And I learned that sometimes the only way to fight back is to expose the truth, no matter how ugly it is. I still feel the sting of what she did, but I also feel stronger, more aware. I don't think I'll ever fully trust anyone again, but I will never let anyone do that to me again either. This whole experience has taught me that justice isn't always quick or easy, but it's worth fighting for. I hope others out there going through something similar find the strength to stand up. Because in the end, no amount of money or lies can replace your dignity and self-respect. And if you're betrayed, don't hesitate to dig deep, seek the truth, and fight for what's right. Because sometimes, that's the only way to come out on top. The final court hearing was the culmination of everything I'd been fighting for. Months of deception, lies, and betrayal all came down to that one day. I sat there looking across the courtroom at Lisa, her face pale and angry, her eyes darting around like she was trying to find a way out. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Relief that I finally had the truth exposed, and emptiness because I knew the damage was done. Nothing could undo the years of lying, the stolen money, or the trust shattered beyond repair. When the judge finally announced her ruling, it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. She ordered Lisa to pay back every cent she'd stolen through offshore accounts, shell companies, and illegal transfers. She also awarded me full ownership of the house and the inheritance, no strings attached. Lisa was ordered to stay away from me, our property, and any of the remaining assets. The judge's words echoed in my mind. Fraudulent conduct cannot be tolerated. It was over. The nightmare, at least in the courtroom, was finished. As I left the courthouse, I felt a strange sense of closure. The months of anxiety, the sleepless nights, the constant paranoia, all of it was finally behind me. But the emotional scars lingered. I kept thinking about the woman I'd loved, the woman I'd married, and how she'd betrayed me so completely. I wondered how she could live with herself, knowing she'd lied, cheated, and stolen from the man who once trusted her more than anyone. I also knew this wasn't just about money. This was about the kind of person she had become. It was a harsh lesson in the fragility of trust and the depths of human deception. In the days that followed, I started the long process of rebuilding my life. I found a new place to live, far from the chaos and betrayal. I cut ties with her completely. No more calls, no more messages. I knew I couldn't undo what had happened, but I could choose to move forward and not let her define me. I also took time to reflect on everything, on the warning signs I missed, on the importance of trust, and on how I had to be more cautious in the future. I learned not to blindly believe in people, no matter how much I want to trust. The experience changed me profoundly. I've become more guarded, more aware of the signs of manipulation and greed. I also realized I was stronger than I thought, capable of fighting for myself when it mattered most. The betrayal hurt like hell, but it forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities and to stand up for what's right. I've come to accept that some people are just capable of lies and deceit, and that sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to fight back with everything you've got. Looking back, I can say I've learned some hard truths. Trust is fragile, and when broken, it can't always be fixed. But justice can be served, even if it takes months of legal battles and emotional pain. I want to tell anyone reading this, if you're going through something similar, don't give up. Stay vigilant, gather evidence, fight for yourself. The truth may be ugly, but it's the only thing that will set you free. And in the end, valuing yourself and standing up for what's right is the greatest victory of all.